How's it going, YouTube? RoboSushi here, bringing you guys another Digimon card game video. Today we're not going to go over a gameplay video. We're not going to go over a deck profile video. Today we're going to go over some rulings. If you guys are familiar with some Yu-Gi-Oh content, maybe you know of Distant Coder. He likes to go over Yu-Gi-Oh rulings so players know exactly how certain specific card interactions are supposed to go. And that's kind of what I'm going to be doing in this video. I'm going to specifically try to go over a lot of the BT7 cards, some interactions that have come up because of new card effects that have come into play that maybe need to be gone over a little bit so we know exactly how those work. Stuff like interruptive effects that I'll go over when we get to the specific card that I'm talking about, but some rulings that need to be fleshed out. Some of them are based off of translation errors. Some of them are just in detailed processes that I feel like are important to go over, not just as somebody who is trying to be a judge and learning their rulings and stuff like that, but also as a player. That way I don't give myself an unfair advantage because I don't know my rulings, and my opponent doesn't get an unfair advantage because they don't know their rulings. If you ever run into a situation where you're not exactly sure how a ruling is working, don't feel afraid to call the judge. That is what the judges are there for. They're there to help out, make sure we know exactly what our cards do, how the cards are ruled, how certain interactions are. So I just want you guys to know that. Never feel afraid to call a judge. That is what they're there for. But without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into the video. I'm going to start off with red, and then we're going to go down the color spectrum: red, blue, yellow, green, black, purple, and then white. I'll try to leave timestamps throughout the video, so if you guys want to know specific colors to work with, because that's the deck you play or that's what you see at locals, feel free to do so. But I always advise, you never know what you're going to run into at a locals, so be sure to watch all of them, in my opinion. That way you know all the different interactions, and so you're prepared for anything that you may see in the BT7 format. Alright everyone, so onto the first card for red that we're going to go over. It's going to be the new tamer introduced in BT7, Takuya Kambara. So this card states that you may place 5 cards with hybrid in their traits from your trash under this tamer in any order to digivolve it into an Emperor Greymon from your hand, paying the memory cost for the digivolution. So the one thing that isn't exactly translated, in my opinion, correctly for this card, and the ruling that works for this card, is the way it reads is originally you may do X to then do Y. You can, the way the card is ruled though, is you can just do X to may do Y, kind of. So in this case we have 5 hybrids in trash, so we activate his effect, we put all 5 of them, stack them up like this, we use Promo Gunimon and a few other hybrids, and then we'll put them under Takuya. Now this is Takuya's effect and not the Emperor Greymon in my hand, so I can choose to just not digivolve this into Emperor Greymon. So now Takuya has a stack of 5 hybrids underneath it, and then he can just stay that way. You can only do this once per turn, of course, so once you do it, then that's it. But you can choose to just stop right here and not digivolve an Emperor Greymon. Your opponent doesn't have to know you have an Emperor Greymon in hand. Your hand is private knowledge. So you can just make this stack, and then if you choose, digivolve it into an Agunimon like you would any tamer. And now this Agunimon has all these nice inheritables, such as Aldemon's effect, maybe Promo Agunimon. So now you can go into another Aldemon and into an Ancient Greymon with 2 Promo Agunimons underneath, reducing its play or its digivolution cost by 4, letting you effectively go up for significantly cheaper into an Ancient Greymon with multiple sources, instead of just warping into the Emperor Greymon. So this is just a ruling that not a lot of people know. They think that you have to, if you do this stack, you have to go into this Emperor Greymon. That is not the case. That's how the card was intended, but again, you can do it like this. Another thing is, it's just hybrids, so if you run this in a multicolored deck, Takuya can put green, yellow, blue, any color hybrids underneath his sources. So just good to know in case you want to do any spicy tech with the Takuya and digivolving into something else that's not the Emperor Greymon. So following up, after I've already gone over Takuya and Emperor Greymon, is a good time to mention another interaction that I've had come up personally, and I feel like a few other people may have had come up at this point. And we're going to go ahead and remake this stack with just 5 other hybrids, a Takuya underneath, and then let's say we've blitzed into the Emperor Greymon. The Emperor Greymon was able to attack this turn. My opponent has an active Rebellymon, and by active I mean it does have blocker and retaliation. Rebellymon is just a good example of this, but this could be any other Digimon that has blocker and also happens to have retaliation. So you swing in with the Emperor Greymon. The effect of Emperor Greymon is if it's blocked, you can unsuspend it and then gain a memory for every hybrid in its sources. So in this case we have 5 hybrids because we've used the effect of Takuya to digivolve into Emperor Greymon. Now, you can then, after the attack is started, you activate any of your when attacking effects. After all those have resolved, in this case there are none, you can then block. Your opponent blocks with Rebellymon. So At the end of this battle, if the Emperor, Rebellion being lower DP, it will be deleted, but it will also delete the Emperor Greymon. But this all happens in the reaction step, where you block with the Rebellion, but then this activates, since he is being blocked, it activates Emperor Greymon's effect to restand and gain the memory, 5 in this case, because he does have 5 hybrid in his sources. This all happens before he is officially blocked and battle begins with Rebellion. The block is declared, but before the battle starts, this effect triggers and resolves, and then battle happens. Of course, in this case, Rebellion is only 7k, he will die to the 12k, this will trigger retaliation, and the stack of Emperor Greymon will go away. But you were able to gain the memory before he is officially deleted, because all of this happens before the battle actually occurs with the blocker and retaliator Digimon. So in this next ruling scenario, we're going to go over an interaction that I think a lot of players kind of know, but there's a specific interaction with the end of turn procedures that may occur a little bit differently in a niche situation. So here, let's assume we start at 3 memory. This is our board state. We have an Analog Youth, we have a Flamemon, and in our hand we have a Agunimon, another Flamemon, and an Ancient Greymon. This is promo Agunimon. So we start our turn, we raise up the Flamemon, we'll then Digivolve into the Agunimon, passing the memory, bumping the memory up to 1, and then we'll choose to attack with Agunimon, activating his when attacking effect to then warp into the Ancient Greymon for another 2 cost, putting my memory over to the opponent's side at 1. So then the Ancient Greymon goes through his checks. Let's, in this case, assume he does not die to any of the security checks. Now end of turn procedures start. This activates the effect of Agunimon. This is the only end of turn procedure lingering effect we have, which is at the end of turn, you delete the Ancient Greymon that you've warped into. So when this effect resolves, the Ancient Greymon is deleted. This will trigger Ancient Greymon's on deletion effect and the all turns effect of Analog Youth to suspend it to hatch an egg and gain a memory. Then you would resolve, so you choose to resolve Analog Youth first to gain that memory and hatch that egg. Then you resolve Ancient Greymons. You can choose this in any order to then play another body. In this case, we're going to play another Flamemon from our hand, and then Ancient Greymon is in the trash. Now, after all the effects are resolved, the turn is at 0 memory, so the turn still continues. I can still continue my plays. If I have, let's say, another Flamemon, I can Digivolve back here, play another Tamer, play another Digimon, anything like that, the turn will continue. Now, in a similar scenario, let's say that we have an unhatched egg. We have, again, the situation where there is a Flamemon at the start of our turn. We have... So the board is the same way, and this time we have a Ancient Greymon, we have a Flamemon, and a Agunimon, and a Gravity Crush, and we start our turn at 1 memory. This is where the difference in end of turn procedures kind of happens here. So what we're going to do is we're going to raise the Flamemon up for the beginning of our turn. We don't quite have the memory to go into the Ancient, or the Agunimon, and then into the Ancient without passing turn. So what you may want to do is activate the Gravity Crush in your hand. This is a card from BT1. It states you can gain 2 memory, but at the end of the turn, you lose 2 memory. So this effect lingers now, has the lingering effect of at the end of turn you'll lose 2 memory. So now I have the memory, we can do the same play we did, Agunimon, swing, attacking in, Digivolving into the Emperor Grey or Ancient Greymon, passing the turn over to 1. Let's in this case assume, again, he lives all of his checks. Now begins end of turn procedures. Here we have the Agunimon's lingering effect, that is to delete this Ancient Greymon at the end of the turn, but we also have Gravity Crush. So as the turn player, you get to activate these in any order. So in this case, most people will think, all right, let's go ahead and activate the Agunimon because I don't want to do the Gravity Crush and pass the turn over, and then my opponent will have more memory. What happens here is you activate the Agunimon, this will trigger Ancient Greymon and Analog Youth at the same time. Here you can do the same play. Let's say in this you decide to suspend Analog Youth because he's deleted, and then you hatch an egg, putting the memory at 0. Then Ancient Greymon's effect is the only other pending effect activation, so then you will delete the Ancient Greymon, or you will activate his effect to go ahead and play the Flamemon. On deletion effects happen in the trash, so effectively Ancient Greymon is in the trash when this happens. Now that you've played the Flamemon, no other pending activations have occurred, and you go back to the last set of pending activations, which included the Agunimon, which is already resolved, and the Gravity Crush. So some players may think, well, memory's at 0, you have to still resolve all the pending activations, in this case Gravity Crush. So even though it's at 0, Gravity Crush still has to finish its resolution to then lose you 2 memory at the end of the turn. So even though you've done the effect of Analog Youth to put yourself at 0 memory, this still has to resolve. This then passes the memory over to 2 on your opponent's side, ending your turn effectively. You cannot just stop this Gravity Crush from resolving after end of turn procedures have started. Be sure to know that just in case this comes up, a few red decks are running Gravity Crush, may try to pull this combo off on you. Just be a little careful on when that happens so you know your end of turn procedures. So the last interaction I'm going to have for red is Atomic Inferno. So Atomic Inferno is a card that it's regular effect, not what we're worried about here in this situation, so I'm not going to go over it, but I am going to go over its security effect. So this is a security effect where all of your Digimon gain security attack +1 until the end of your turn. Now, what a lot of people may not think about is when this comes out of security, it doesn't just involve the Digimon that are on the field. Say you have an Agunimon, a Takuya, and a Digimon back here in Raising. This effect doesn't just apply to this Agunimon, it applies to all of your Digimon. So in this case, turn passes over to your side, you raise up this Flamemon. This Flamemon does in fact have security attack +1, as well as the Agunimon, as well as this Takuya. So if you want to Digivolve this Takuya and go into it, it will also have the security attack +1. It's kind of a global effect, I'll call it, that makes it so where it almost affects the player over just the specific Digimon on the field. This is of course important to know because there are a few other cards that do this, like Holy Flame out of security. Ice Wall is the same way, Beast Cyclone, Blazing Storm of Metal, just to name a few. But do know that this doesn't just affect Digimon on the field, it affects all the Digimon that may come up to the field or may become Digimon from Tamers. It just affects all of your Digimon, and it is an interaction that will come up because there's a lot of this card going around in green-red hybrids and in just pure red hybrids. Now that we're done with red, we're going to move on to blue. So there's not a whole lot of blue interactions that I want to go over, some blue rulings. One card, of course, is going to be Koji. Koji is the same ruling as Takuya, where you can just take 5 hybrids from your hand, tuck them underneath, and then choose not to Digivolve in a Magna. But while we're on the topic of Koji, we'll go over a few other things that you may want to know. Let's say this is the situation you have going on. You have a Digimon that you have like a hybrid, you have Koji, and you also have Beowulfmon. This kind of goes over you do as much as you want as you can on the card effect. So in this situation, Beowulfmon can add a card back to your hand with a hybrid back from its sources to your hand to bounce a level 4 or lower Digimon. You can choose to do this effect to bounce this Kumamon back to your hand to not bounce anything back on your opponent's field if there's not a valid target, just to get the card back in hand. The same kind of applies for, in this situation, you have a Magna Garurumon. Magna Garurumon's effect lets you bounce a hybrid from its sources to bounce that exact same level from your opponent's side of the field. So let's say maybe you want this Kumamon back to your hand and they have only a level 5 on the field, but you want to add a card back to your hand via effect for something like Koji's effect or Magna Garurumon's effect. So you swing with Magna Garurumon using his When Digivolve or When Attacking effect, adding the Kumamon, this card is added back to your hand, activating and triggering the effect of Magna Garurumon, his other effect, to unsuspend him. So even though you didn't have a target, you do as much as you can still do it. Again, you can only do this once per turn when attacking and or when digivolving. So if you choose to do it when you digivolve, you can't do it when you attack, of course, but know that you don't have to have a valid target to add the card back to your hand if you either want the card back to your hand or you want to unsuspend Magna Garurumon. Now, in a similar vein to blue, I did only have one interaction for blue to go over. I only have one that I really want to go over for yellow. In this case, it is on the effect of Rasenmon. So Rasenmon's first effect, which is the first part of his text that we're going to go over, says, when digivolving into this card from your hand, the memory cost of the digivolution is equal to the number of cards in your security stack. If you have 0, it still costs 1. You can't make it for free. So what I wanted to go over here is, let's say your opponent has something like a Gaussmon or a Syakomon that stops you from reducing memory cost, and you only have 1 security, effectively making Rasenmon a 1 to digivolve Digimon. This does not count as reducing the digivolution cost. Rasenmon sets his digivolution cost to that number. So something like Syakomon, he is normally a 5 to digivolve digivolution cost, but if you have the effect to set it to 1, in this case 1 or 0 security, Syakomon can't stop that. You can still digivolve the Rasenmon into on top of one of your level 5 Digimon for just 1 memory without being able to have it blocked by something like Syakomon. While on the topic of Digimon setting their memory cost for their evolution as opposed to just reducing it, we're going to go over the effect of Rhino Kabuterimon. Now, his first effect, of course, does reduce digivolution requirement or digivolution cost if you have a tamer in the sources. That's not what we're worried about here. We're worried about his when attacking effect. So this card states if there's a Digimon or if there's a card with hybrid or insectoid in this Digimon's traits, in this Digimon's digivolution cards, when this Digimon attacks, you can digivolve it into an insectoid or a 10 warriors with for a memory cost of 3. So this doesn't say, so normally if you think about something like Ancient Beetlemon has a digivolution cost of 5. What happens with Rhino Kabuterimon is you swing, you activate his effect, you then digivolve him into the Ancient Beetlemon for 3. This isn't reducing the memory cost, just like in the same way as Rasenmon. It sets the memory cost of the Digivolution to 3, so stuff like Syakomon cannot reduce the Digivolution cost or stop it from being 3 memory and make it be 5 memory. So the last card I wanted to go over for green is going to show off some purple interaction as well, because this really is the only time you're ever going to see this interaction, but there's a lot of Eismon going around, so I figured I should go over this. And this is Ibanwumon. So Ibanwumon's first effect, of course, isn't what we're worried about, but it's when he digivolves, you can suspend one of your opponent's Digimon, and then you gain a memory for each of your opponent's suspended Digimon. What we're worried about here is the second effect, which basically states on your opponent's turn, all of your Digimon gain the effect all of your opponent's Digimon gain the effect of whenever they were to unsuspend, you have to discard a card. So in this situation, it's the start of my turn. It is the unsuspend phase. I have a suspended Gabumon and a suspended Black or Greymon. I have an Eismon Scatter Mode and Trash, and I have 2 Eismon in my hand. So the Ibanwumon's effect, first off, is not mandatory. If you decide that you don't want to unsuspend this Gabumon, you can choose to just activate the effect. Again, these are in the unsuspend phase. It's an interruptive effect, so it happens simultaneously, where you would choose to unsuspend this Black or Greymon. You decide, I'm going to unsuspend it. I'm going to discard this Eismon. This will trigger Eismon's effect, but not quite yet. It will trigger after the unsuspend phase has finished. So I've successfully fulfilled the conditions of the interruptive effect of the Ibanwumon, which kind of interrupts regular effect resolution. And I unsuspend Black War Growlmon, unsuspend my Tamers, and opponent's Digimon with Reboot all unsuspend. That all happens simultaneously. Then, after the unsuspend phase has finished, then the effect of Eismon triggers it as being discard when you have a Scatter Mode and Trash, and then it will play. The reason why this kind of comes up, that it happens this way and not during the unsuspend phase, is there's an interaction with another card called Lotusmon from BT7 that states whenever you play a level 5 or level 4 or lower Digimon, it comes into play and suspends. So in this situation, if you did have a Lotusmon on the field and this plays, it comes in suspended. You cannot unsuspend it during the unsuspend phase to say discard another Eismon, because you have passed the unsuspend phase. All of those effects happen simultaneously for the unsuspend phase, and then the Eismon triggers and then resolves. Again, if you wanted to unsuspend both of these, you would then trash 2 Eismon for each of their effect. They would all unsuspend simultaneously, and then each Eismon would play themselves out in a separately. They would trigger at the same time. You'd activate one in succession of the other, and they would both play out one at a time. So not an interaction that may come up a whole lot, but it is something that comes up, especially in purple now. If you run into something like Ibanwumon and Eismon being in the format a lot, it's definitely something you kind of want to know about going forward. So that is all we have for green. Now we're going to move on to black. The first interaction for black that I want to go over is something that is going to come up more in the following formats when there's more cards introduced for this archetype, but for right now it's still good to kind of go over it. First up, we're going to go into the X antibody cards, specifically how Dorumon would activate when being added to the sources via an effect. So in this situation, we have a Dorugamon on field. We're going to digivolve into a Dorugreymon. Dorugremon's effect lets you add a black Digimon card with X antibody in its traits underneath this Digimon's Digivolution sources to keep it from being deleted by card effects or have its DP deleted. So in this situation, we're going to tuck underneath a Dorumon. So instead of what a lot of people may think is this Dorugreymon or this Dorumon was just added, so you don't get to gain the memory. But in the case of how the game is ruled and how Dorumon is ruled, if you add this card into its sources, the stack knows that it had a Digimon source added to it. So Dorumon's inherited effect, since it is added to the source, its inherited effect becomes active when one of your effects places a Digivolution card under this Digimon, gain a memory. The stack knows, the card knows that an effect added itself, it doesn't count that it worries about itself, more so that it counts that a source was added to it via card effect, you get to gain the memory. So let's say you have, 5 or to memory, you digivolve into the Doru Greymon. You add the Dorumon from your hand underneath the sources. This triggers Dorumon, assuming that there's no memory blocker. You gain a memory, you can still continue your turn. So it's an important thing going forward. Again, not as much so right now because we only have BT7 X antibody cards, but going forward we're going to have more in BT8 and then especially in BT9, a whole bunch of X antibody support. So it's good to get your rulings confirmed now. So the last interaction we're going to go over for Black, the last little bit of ruling, is going to involve a card called Dark Nightmon. Not a lot of people may know about Dark Nightmon. It doesn't have a whole bunch of support. It sees a little bit of fringe play in D Brigade, but it does come up, and this interaction may come up for you if you do play this card. So of course his first effect is on play you can place a Skull Nightmon and or a Deadly Axemon from your hand or trash underneath its sources as Digivolution sources in any order. What we're really going over is his second effect here. Now, it is mistranslated. This is something that is very important to note because currently it's an all turns effect that states when this Digimon is deleted. So that is basically, the way it's worded is an on deletion effect. The way the card should be worded is when this Digimon would be deleted. Now, the would be is very important. It turns this into an interruptive effect, whereas it will interrupt the regular order of like turn processes, so, or effect resolution I should say, where this would, it's kind of like Ibanwumon, where instead of during the unsuspend phase you have to interrupt the unsuspend phase to activate his effect. So here let's assume that we've already played him and it's the start of our turn, it's our turn, we have a Dark Nightmon, Skull Nightmon, and a Deadly Axemon in his sources, and we have an Analog Youth on field, and we are going to attack our opponent's security. So we swing in with Dark Nightmon, and the first check out of security is a Wyvern's Breath. So the only valid target in this situation is the Dark Nightmon, so the Dark Nightmon will get targeted and have its DP reduced to 0. After this effect is finished resolving, the game will check for game mechanics, such as having a level 2 on field, or a Digimon with 0 DP to then delete or move to level 2 to trash. In this situation, Dark Nightmon is at 0, so the game mechanics would try to delete him. This is where his interruptive effect comes into play. Again, it's supposed to be a when you would effect, not a when it is deleted effect, so this kind of affects how this would resolve. So before he is officially deleted by game mechanics is when you can choose to play out both the Dark Nightmon or Skull Nightmon and the Deadly Axemon. Then after they're played, these effects won't activate because it was caused by an interruptive effect, kind of like how the effect of Eismon triggers after the unsuspend phase. This effect of Deadly Axemon won't trigger until after this Dark Nightmon is deleted. Now, when the Dark Nightmon is trying to be deleted, the effect of Deadly Axemon will trigger, and if it had sources, Analog Boy would be able to trigger now. But since he no longer has sources when he is officially deleted, even though he had sources before, since it is a when you would, this happens before, the effect of Analog Youth cannot activate because he doesn't have sources right now. So then he would just be deleted. You wouldn't be able to suspend Analog Youth, no more checks are made, and then you can activate the effect of Deadly Axemon. In a situation where you do the same thing but you decide to not play the Skull Nightmon because it is an and or, so you can choose just to play the Deadly Axemon, you hit the Wyvern's Breath out of security, drop his DP down to 0, interruptive effect kicks in, you play out the Deadly Axemon, then he is deleted by the game mechanics, going to trash. Now is the chance that you have to suspend your Analog Youth to hatch an egg, gain a memory, and activate the effect of Deadly Axemon. You can choose these in any order. These trigger at the same time, so you can choose whatever order, but you have to make sure that if you want to do something like do this Analog Boy combo with the Dark Nightmon, it has to have sources, because by the time it is deleted, if you do play out the 2 Digimon, it no longer has the sources. You will not get to activate the effect of Analog Boy. It's kind of Analog Boy works well in tandem with this effect and some D Brigade effects, so I felt like it was an important ruling and effect procedure or effect resolution procedures to go over. So now that we're going to go on to our purple rulings, I decided to go ahead and start with Eismon, since we have already introduced Eismon in the Ibanwumon ruling. But here what we're going to do is in a situation where we have a Eismon and a Scatter Mode going to trash at the same time. So here we would Digivolve in a Lady Devimon, we'll draw our card for Digivolution, draw our 2 cards for Lady Devimon's effect, and then discard the Scatter Mode and the Eismon at the same time. So of course Eismon effect reads when this card would be trashed from your hand using one of your effects. if you have a scatter mode in the trash, you are able to play it. So even though there wasn't a scatter mode already existing in the trash, when you discarded Eismon via the effect of Lady Devimon, there was in fact an Eismon that you put in the trash in that same turn. This still allows Eismon to trigger properly and then activate his effect to play himself out. Even though there wasn't a pre-existing scatter mode, when you did resolve the effect of Lady Devimon, Eismon did see a scatter mode in trash and is able to play himself out. So the last bit of purple rulings I want to go over is really just kind of broad spectrum, but I do have an example to go over, but it's how on deletion effects resolve. So in this situation, this is the stack we have on field. We have a Rihimon with a Lowimon and a Koichi. Koichi's inheritable effect is on deletion, gain of memory. Rihimon's effect is on deletion if there is a hybrid in the sources. In this case, there is a Lowimon. Then on deletion, he is able to play out a tamer from the trash without paying its memory cost. So in this situation, let's assume the Rihimon swings into security, it dies to something, either a card effect or a big Digimon, and then ends up going to the trash. Now, on deletion effects trigger in or activate in the trash. So his on deletion effect is triggered for both Koichi and Rihimon. So in this situation, you can choose whatever order. Most people will choose Koichi's effect to go ahead and gain the memory, and then they'll activate Rihimon's effect to play a tamer. In this situation, you can't actually play the Koichi. It is in the trash, so even though he was just put in the trash and the Rihimon was just deleted, he does resolve in the trash, so you can still play out the Koichi, activate his effect, and now you have your tamer on field. Now, in a situation where, let's say, you accidentally activate, or maybe on purpose, whatever you choose, you activate Rihimon's effect first to play the Koichi before you've activated Koichi's effect. So again, like I mentioned before, in this situation, they both trigger at the same time, and then you play out the Koichi. You still have to resolve Koichi's on deletion effect, but Koichi is on the field now. This is the most current pending activation, so you will have to activate this first, which will then draw you a card, discard you a card. Assuming no other activations have occurred because of this, now you can resolve Rihimon's of other effect. Now, even though the Koichi is no longer in the sources and in the trash, you can still activate his inheritable of on deletion, because at this time the only thing the game checks for is the fact that the Digimon that was at the top of the stack that had it in the sources is still in the trash. So what this means is, since the Rihimon is still in the trash, even though Koichi is no longer in the trash, it still recognizes that the on deletion effect of Koichi is there, and you can gain the memory off of Koichi's effect even though he is on the field. Now, let's go over a similar situation. Again, you have the same stack on the field. You activate Calling from Darkness. This deletes one of your Digimon to grab up to purple Digimon from your trash. Now, up to in this game means that you have to take at least one if there is a valid target, but you can take up to two. You don't have to take two, but you have to at least take one. So here we'll activate Calling, deleting Rihimon. This will trigger the effect of Rihimon and Koichi in the trash. Now, we have to finish resolving Calling first. So in this situation, let's say you just take one Lowimon, you decide to only take the one, you take the Lowimon, and now you can resolve the effect of Rihimon and Koichi. They're still in the trash. Since the effect of Rihimon was triggered when there was a Lowimon in the sources, it can still resolve in the trash, so you don't have to worry about that. Now, if you take two cards, or you still only take one, but let's say you take the Lowimon and the Rihimon is no longer in the trash. He is unable to resolve his on deletion effect, so even though Koichi is still in the trash, the Digimon that had the source underneath it, in this case Rihimon, is no longer in the trash, so you cannot gain the memory from Koichi. You can also not play the tamer from your trash because Rihimon is no longer in the trash to resolve his on deletion effect. So the last color we're going to go over for this video is going to be white. Now, there's not too many cards that I really wanted to go over. In fact, there's only one, kind of two. But we're going to have a bunch of purple cards because it kind of works for this situation, just because these were the cards I had ready. The card we're going to go over is Susanoo-mon, specifically with the interaction with win rate 60%. So there's going to be a little bit of tie-in. Susanoo-mon's effect states that you can return up to, or you can return 10 tamers and or hybrids from your trash or hand to the bottom of your deck to then digivolve Susanoo-mon onto one of your tamers as if they were a level 6 Digimon. So, and then win rate is another card I'm going to go over. That's as long as you have a tamer in play, you can ignore its color requirements. In this situation, we have a Koichi on the field. We have 9 tamers and hybrids in our trash. Whenever the next time you were to digivolve one of your Digimon, you can trash a color card that is the same color as the digivolving Digimon to the trash to then reduce the memory cost by 4. So in this situation, we are going to go ahead and be at 5 at the effect resolution of win rate. So Here, we're going to have to reveal. So the way Susanomon works, when you digivolve him on top of a tamer, you reveal Susanomon. It's Susanomon's effect that puts the card in trash. Now, you have to make sure you've activated the effect of win rate first. So it's activated, you've paid your memory cost. This is a lingering effect. So the next time you would digivolve, you can reduce the memory cost by 4. Susanomon makes it so you have to, take the cards from your hand or trash. What we have in our hand is a Lowimon and a Rihimon. So in this situation, some might think, okay, I'm going to discard a card for win rate when I digivolve into Susanomon. You have to resolve the effect of Susanomon to take the cards from your trash or hand to the bottom of the deck. So you can't discard the card off of win rate and then use that card for Susanomon's effect to bottom deck the cards. In this situation, you would have to use one of these cards in hand and then this. Let's say you only had one Lowimon in hand, so that was your hybrid. To activate Susanomon's effect, you would have to take this card and the 9 cards in your trash that for Susanomon's effect and bottom deck them all. Now you would digivolve Susanomon on top of your Koichi. It has to be purple because Koichi is a purple tamer, so the game recognizes him as a purple level 6 Digimon since he is a purple tamer. Now, you've used the Lowimon from your hand, you no longer have a card to discard. You had to use the Lowimon. Now in the situation where you had another one in hand, then yes, you can use this card to discard, and you will have, now at the point when you've digivolved, you'll have 10 of these in from the trash, bottom of the deck. Now the Rihimon's the only card in your trash. You're able to use win rate and reduce the memory cost by 4, making it a 3 memory cost. This is really just to go over, you reveal Susanomon first, then resolve the effect, and then you digivolve with win rate. So you can't use the card that you've discarded off of win rate to use it for Susanomon's effect, because Susanomon's effect happens before the discard officially happens for win rate. Important to know, just so you make sure you have the right cards in hand and you're actually able to do the effect and then still do win rate's effect. And that's it for all the rulings I have, everyone. I know it's a little bit of a longer form video, but I did kind of want to go over these different cards interactions and rulings. I feel like it's important that we know all of our rulings just so we can make sure we don't accidentally give ourselves an unfair advantage or our opponents get an unfair advantage because neither of us know the rulings properly. So I want to make sure more players know exactly how these card interactions are going to happen. It's also important to know because we are going to continue to see these cards going forward. At the time of recording, there is about a little bit over a month left of the BT7 format, so we are going to continue seeing these cards at future events, at future locals, and it's just important all around to know what kind of interactions we're going to get into. But all that being said, if you want to see more different ruling and interactions, maybe some more in-detail stuff about effect resolution or something like that, be sure to leave a comment down below. I'd be happy to make another video. This video was a blast to make. A little bit more editing and stuff than I'm used to, but it really is an important video in my opinion so that we as players can know exactly what we're doing with our decks as we go forward playing the card game. I will have more of these ruling videos for sure when new formats come out, but if you guys want to see some older cards or older formats gone over for certain interactions that you may or may not know about, be sure to leave that down in the comments below. If they're quick, little, easy rulings, I'll go ahead and mention them in the comments, but if there's a few more complex ones, I'd love to make another video on that. All that being said, guys, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this. We will also have more deck profiles, more gameplay videos for sure coming up. I'm going to have those keep on posting on the channel. This is just another little bit of content that I really enjoyed making and felt was important to go over. All that being said, guys, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video. Later.